Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from my cabin down by the creek. So today we're going to talk about the Israeli government and Mossad and ask the question, are they the puppet masters controlling everything? Are they behind multiple false flags? Are they in control of our Congress and our Senate, or maybe even our president? Are they in control of the press, the movie business, and industry around the world? We're going to answer that question, or we're going to ask that question. Maybe it's up to you to answer it. But before we do, I want to thank all of you who support this channel with your kind financial gifts. This channel is funded exclusively by viewers like you, and your contributions through PayPal and Cash App in the description below there, and my post office box. You help keep this channel on the air, keep the lights on in my cabin, and food in my pantry. So if you find this content to be entertaining, intriguing, interesting, educational, informative, whatever, please consider contributing so that I can stay on the air and continue to make this my full-time occupation. And thanks to all of you who already do. So the Israeli conspiracy theories are flying as of late. One of the biggest controversial areas where this has come up is with Candace Owens' belief that the Charlie Kirk murder was sponsored by and potentially carried out through the actions of Mossad. And I won't get into her storyline. Go check her out. I will say she's put a lot of work in this, but there's a huge backlash against her and against anybody who suggests that Israel is anything but perfect, right? Israel can do no wrong, and there's a lot of money behind that opinion. And I will say this, we kind of all know that members of Congress and the Senate on both sides of the aisle receive huge contributions from Israeli-based political action committees to do the bidding of the Israeli government and make sure that laws passed and money distributed benefits Israel. And but does that mean that they are owned, that the people are owned? Potentially. The love of money is the root of all evil. You want to find out the truth, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. Now, there's been a huge backlash against Candace Owen for this. And many people have thought she's lost her mind. She seems very convinced, and I do recommend that you look into what she's saying. What can it hurt? Knowledge and exploration of ideas is something I will always encourage. Now, full disclosure, I am not a fan of the Israeli government, and I stand as a Christian in stark opposition to Judaism. And there is this infection that has entered the church in the last 150 years that's called Zionism, and it comes from the concept of dispensationalism. Schofield and a handful of others in the late 1800s put together an ideology, and they tied it to the end times, and in it is a clear belief that the Jews are God's chosen people and that they are necessary for the end times to play out. And I would say that those people that believe that are misled. I'm going to stand behind 1,850 years of Christian doctrine and teaching, because Jesus took away that status from the Jews. Jesus confronted the Jews of his time, called them the children of Satan, said their father is not his father, their father is Satan. This is the words of Jesus Christ from the Gospels. And dispensationalism has taken scriptures from the Old Testament and mostly from the book of Revelation and stitched them together into a very unsecure doctrine, not based in fact, but based on a foundation of sinking sand. And I believe what the church has always believed, what most of the church still believes, that the Jews of Jesus' time forfeited all of those Old Testament promises, and their status as God's chosen people was taken from them when Jesus confronted them and called them the children of Satan, and then cursed the fig tree and used it as an example of what was going to happen to Israel, that Israel was going to be chopped down like a tree that doesn't produce fruit and thrown on the fire and burned, and that the promises God made to the people of Israel in the Old Testament were going to now be transferred through the proclamation of Christ to you and me, Christians, followers of Christ. So I'm God's chosen people. You're God's chosen people. And the church has always seen Jews and, religious Jews as anybody else who follows a false religion. That they're not any different in the eyes of the church right up until modern times than, say, a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Satanist or an atheist. They're all in need of the conversion to Christianity and the life changing power of Jesus Christ. And that the Jews are in no way God's chosen people. That was taken from them. And if you follow the channel, you know that I'm one of those people that holds to true traditional Christian ideology when it comes to that religion. Now, having said that, I'm not a racist, right? I don't believe just because you got Jewish blood that you're some kind of evil manipulator, right? I think people that think that are simply racist, right? I will tell you right up front, Judaism is not Christianity. The Talmud believes that Jesus was a false prophet and that he's in hell right now, being boiled in human feces. It's in the Talmud. Read it. And so I'm not a big fan of that religion at all, right? I stand in stark opposition to it. I don't believe in the mixing of Christianity and Judaism. And those who make their theories and their doctrines based solely on the Old Testament and the book of Revelation and disregard Jesus' curse of the Jews is, that you're not correct. You don't know how to, you don't value the words of Christ and his promises. And he promised that you and I are the new chosen people of God. And then everyone who watches the channel knows I'm not a big fan of the Israeli government. I feel like their brutality in Palestine, their disregard for the lives of innocent children is reprehensible. And for them to use some of these Old Testament scriptures to justify what they're doing now, 6,000 years later to these people, is blasphemous, if you ask me. Now, what happened on October 7th was horrible. I think I condemn both sides of that argument. But that just because you've been attacked doesn't mean you get to murder children in their bed from miles high with huge bombs that blow up entire apartment complexes to try to kill one terrorist. And that's not a popular opinion, but that's how I am, and that's what I believe. And now we do know that our politicians are definitely in the pocket of certain political action committees, and those who have backing from Israel are part of it, and they are for sale. Our congressmen and our senators are for sale, and many of them have been bought and paid for to ensure that Israel gets special treatment. And if I had one complaint with Donald Trump, is that he tends to, I believe, because of Zionist doctrine, this belief that Jews are still God's chosen people and have some special place in God's heart because who they used to be. I think that that's clouded his judgment. I think he lets Netanyahu get away literally with murder. And so having said that, that doesn't mean I necessarily believe that Mossad is behind everything. Candace Owen, is saying that Charlie Kirk's murder was because of Mossad. Many people think that Mossad and the Israeli government working with U.S. intelligence were behind 9/11, that was a false flag. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying a lot of people believe that. And now we've got this massacre in Australia. And new conspiracy theories are coming forth now claiming that even though these two gunmen had connections to the Islamic Brotherhood, but really what they were people who would do anything for money, and that they were paid to perpetrate this massacre as a false flag. And you might ask, well, why would the Israeli government and Mossad want to massacre Jews on a beach in Australia? Well, before this happened, the Australian government did something that Netanyahu and the Jewish government hated. They announced that they were going to recognize Palestine as a independent autonomous nation and call for a two-state solution, which is the opposite of what Israel wants. In fact, Netanyahu came out with an ominous warning when he told the Australian leadership that they had till the end of Rosh Hashanah to, or the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. I'm not sure how that works, but a set date nonetheless, to take that back, or else. Or else what? So it doesn't make sense for Islamicists to be behind, like Islamic Brotherhood or the PLO or any of these other terrorist groups, to be behind this massacre in Australia, since the Australian government and the people of Australia have been on their side. And Mossad and Israel and Netanyahu would definitely benefit from that kind of false flag. If they could hire someone to do this in the name of Islam, then it would change public opinion about Palestine and elevate in the minds of people Israel as a victim state that needs their support. And we have to come against these pesky Islamicists. And so, where it doesn't make sense that Australians who seem to be on the side of Palestine would be targeted, right? When, they're their friend, right? They're doing the thing that the Islamic states want. They want Palestine to be recognized by the Australian government. So it's kind of like biting the hand that feeds you. It'd be like punishing somebody who's already doing the right thing. However, Israel could benefit from this kind of false flag. There's a lot of people on YouTube that have this detailed out, and it looks very convincing. And it's not like this kind of thing hasn't happened before. A while back there was a Israeli American with dual citizenship who was caught as being prosecuted for putting forth hundreds of hoax threats against Jewish civic centers and synagogues and other places where Jewish Americans meet and gather. And it caused a lot of chaos. In fact, everybody was sure it was anti-Semites. And as it turns out, it was a false flag by this dual citizenship Israeli American who was doing that to elevate the victim status of Jewish people everywhere. And it was most definitely a form of false flag when he's making threats against his own people to garner support for their cause. And what's interesting is this same person was responsible for more than 500 false bomb threats in Australia. Don't. Interesting, right? Some people believe that Israel and the Mossad are behind everything. And there's a lot of theories out there to support this. But tell me, what do you think? There's no doubt that Hollywood has been dominated by Jewish Americans. Mayer kind of personally invented this, MGM Studios, Metro Golden Mayer. His story is pretty amazing. About a Jewish businessman who sees an untapped market and moves out to California to Hollywood and invents the movie industry as we know it, utilizing a technology that had not yet been tapped and brought to its full potential. And that through the course of his endeavors, he always favored people who were also Jewish, to the point now where so much of Hollywood down through the years has been dominated by these by Jewish Americans. And a lot of your big stars who have changed their name from their Jewish names to other names to cover this, but there is definitely a preference for people who are Jewish in that industry. They look out for themselves. And it's the same can be said for much of the press and several other industries, right? And so there is definitely something to that for sure. The Rothschilds, the wealthiest of all the Jewish families, have used false flags in the past. It was a type of false flag that was responsible for elevating them and creating the modern banking system as we know it. And so the banks in Hollywood, a lot of that are dominated by Jewish Americans. My girlfriend Loretta, she has an old friend who's an old Jewish lady, and her money and her husband's money came from the movie business, and she's adamant about it. She's like, Jews run the movie business. We always have, and we always will. We invented it. We got the right to. And, we favor who we favor, you know. So, was the Bondi massacre a false flag put forth by Mossad? Was the October 7th attack a form of false flag? The Palestinians, the terrorists from that country, most definitely perpetrated all of those murders on October 7th. But something few people talk about is why did the Israeli government send everybody home on the border? Why was the border wide open on that day? There's lots of evidence that the Israelis, the Mossad, knew this was going to happen, and they let it happen anyway to give them the support they needed so that they could go in and do what they always wanted to do to Palestine, which is to bomb it into the Stone Age and destroy it once and for all. And if I had one bone to pick with Donald Trump, it would be that he has let this idea, this dispensationalist idea that the Jews are God's chosen people and somehow special to God, and that they should be given special treatment, special rights, extra money, extra support for theological reasons which are built on falsehoods. And if you want to see who a president is, you definitely want to look at the last 2 years of their second term. That's when they kind of throw everything out the window and show who they really are. And I got a real problem with what Donald Trump said about the Rob Reiner murder. Um, there's no evidence that his politics had anything to do with this. Rob Reiner, who's not one of my favorite people, I kind of low key despised the guy. I think he might be, him and Robert De Niro might be a couple of the people that I challenged to an old man fight once upon a time. Put him up, put him up. I'll fight you with one arm tied behind my back. My shoulder hurts. Ow. But having said that, his murder seems to be a direct result of his son's mental illness. And as a parent of a mentally ill son, I can tell you I can't sit at the dinner table with him, with my own son, because I'm afraid he might cut my throat someday. And so I have to protect myself. And I don't think, Rob Reiner and his wife ever thought this boy would do this to them. And it's tragic. But what Donald Trump said was nothing short of narcissistic. And he's been condemned for that statement, implying that it was Rob Reiner's politics that drove his son crazy. That doesn't even make sense. Mental illness is not something you should make fun of, make light of, and nobody should take joy in somebody else's tragedy. So it's stuff like that. Donald Trump's support, which makes me say I can't really call myself a Trump supporter anymore, even though I helped get him elected. I campaigned for him on this channel. I voted for him, and he has done some good things, but I do not agree with the special treatment that Israel's been getting. They're not God's chosen people. They're just another government, and they need to be held accountable like every other government. So Mossad is definitely one of the darkest intelligence agencies on the planet. They have proven over and over again they'll do whatever it takes to benefit Israel, even at the expense of Americans, even at the expense of Jewish Americans, maybe even at the expense of Australian Jews. So, what do you think? Is Mossad behind everything? Are they behind the Charlie Kirk murder, or was it Antifa like I think it was? I don't subscribe to these conspiracy theories, but you can't help but notice that from the very beginning, the Zionist Christians working with the Israeli government have been behind a lot of stuff. And I'm not a racist. I won't tolerate any racism on this channel. But if you want to bring facts on that in the comment section, open a dialogue, you want to email me with information, I can tell you that the whole thing looks kind of fishy. It's definitely worth a don't. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Mossad wasn't the puppet masters and the Israeli government wasn't running the world, along with American and British Jewish families who hold a lot of wealth in this world. Then many of them acquired this wealth through nefarious means and tactics. So tell me what you think in the comment section. Who killed Charlie Kirk? Right? Was it, these Antifa people, or was it Mossad paying them? Some people even believe that the attempt on Donald Trump's life at Butler, Pennsylvania, when his ear got nicked by a bullet, was a message sent to him by Mossad letting him know they could touch him whenever they wanted to. Or it was a lone gunman. Who knows? The lone gunman theory. But I will say this, after that happened in this second term, Donald Trump has been more supportive of Israel than he ever was before. And but it's because of this bad doctrine that I would like to see undone. But the brainwashing is already in effect. People read the Bible and they hear what they want to hear, and they don't pay attention when Jesus called the Jews of his day the children of Satan and cursed them and took all of the promises given to the people of Israel, given to the Jewish people, and transferred them to the church. I'm God's chosen people, and if you're a Christian, so are you. Tell me what you think in the comments section. Don't forget to support the channel. Hope Mossad don't come after me. No, you'll never hear me talk about the Church of Scientology because they're more dangerous than Mossad. Don't. Did I say that out loud? Whoops. Hey, we like to have fun here while we talk about the scary stuff in this world. So support the channel. Links in the description below, and we'll see you next time.